The Callisto Project is a curious game. It's both glorious and repetitive, it's both terrifying and predictable, it's a beautiful looking game marred with poor optimizations, and what starts out as a rather wonderful experience turns into a bit of a slog as the Callisto Project runs out of ideas long before the final credits roll. But even with these issues to hand, is it worth putting on your list from Santa? Well, go grab a beer and let's discuss this and more in today's spoiler-free review. So I'm not going to delve too much into the story here, and to keep it real simple, I'll use the Steam description that simply says, survive to escape the horrors of Callisto and uncover the dark secrets of Jupiter's dead moon. Ooh. Now, you would have seen trailers of the Callisto Project and you will know it's full of monsters and gore, and it's fair to say it sets itself up as a horror game, and by and large it does a pretty decent job here. There are moments of genuine shit yourself terror, usually resulting from a jump scare where a monster hurdles out of a vent or a maggot leaps out of a locker. However, you eventually become conditioned to these types of scares, and you soon realise, around 4 hours into the game, that developers pretty much exhausted all of their thinking to come out with new ways to shit yourself. The suspense drains quickly as you can almost see what's about to happen before it's even happened. And so the Callisto Project starts out as a horror and quickly finds itself melding into something more of an action game. And that's a problem because the environments do not offer the freedom for that type of gameplay. You see, the environments are claustrophobic, filled with narrow corridors and strewn with debris and furniture. What it does well is create an atmosphere similar in vein to Alien, Death Stranding, and of course Dead Space, clearly a big inspiration here. But rather than create its own DNA, the Callisto Project instead suffers from an identity crisis, where it tries to reimagine those previous games, but not really offer its own style. Environments, whilst nice looking, contain little in the way of interactivity. Never do you get rewarded for trying to find every nook and cranny, and so the sense that the Callisto Project is on rails and it's directing you in that one direction is very strong, which is a shame as it's based on a huge prison moon base. There is some variety though, because you can use spike walls to impale enemies or use conveniently placed explosives to blast them to kingdom come, but at its heart it's a very linear approach that always consists of clearing an area from monsters, climbing through a lot, and I mean a lot, of bloody vents to find basically what is always an electrical fuse, where you put into a fucking electrical fuse box to open a bloody door to find yourself in a new area, to rinse and repeat the whole process over and over. It certainly moves at a fast pace, and these areas are small in size to clear, but what starts out as interesting soon evolves into something far more repetitive and predictable. Eventually the fun of scares is shackled by the monotony of discovering a next vent or shimmying through a crack. The vents and shimmying parts are used so often that Reggie and the boys were rolling up laughing, because we imagined the developers sitting in a room saying, look lads, we got a room here and we don't know what to do in how to get the player from point A to point B. So how about we throw in a vent and make them shimmy through a crack for sheer banter? Well, let me tell you everyone, it's not banter, it's bloody annoying. As for the combat, it's very much a mixed bag. Firstly, you have to give credit where credit is due, and I like the fact that the combat is trying something different here with a dodge mechanic. Pressing left or right as enemies swing will give you the ability to duck and counter by smashing their faces in. There are no prompts on screen, and this ensures that you're squarely focused on the animations at hand. When on a one-in-one battle with the enemy, it feels fair, it feels punchy, and it's all rather satisfying. The issue then comes when you are faced with multiple enemies, where the narrow corridors work against you and the poor camera angles make it feel like you are fighting the game artist as much as the vermin before you. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, because it's not that you aren't dodging effectively, but rather that you can't see for shit what is going on around you. Likewise, there will be times when you think you've dodged and the animation doesn't quite kick in, and the multiple deaths faced will leave you feeling frustrated, especially when having to repeat a section after each death, even if it means shimmying through another bloody wall crack, which might be 10 seconds of your life wasted. So it's credit to them for giving us something above and beyond other games, but the execution is poorly implemented. However, you are given some rather nifty tools to go to battle with. You'll have a pistol or shotgun that you can craft and upgrade, and the best weapon of all is a glove that effectively works like the gravity gun from Half-Life. Here you can pick up enemies and throw them around like ragdolls and impale them on those spikes I mentioned. Again though, the identity crisis ensues because it feels like they don't really know what to do with this gravity gun, and the environments are simply not interactive enough to warrant such a cool weapon. Yes, you can pick up crates and boxes and fuzz them at someone's head, but that's about all you can do, and it just feels like a major missed opportunity. I'd love to have seen more destructible environments here to use to your advantage, such as, I don't know, having lights fall down or pulling twisted metal from doors into their guts. The enemies are varied enough to be interesting, and they do offer a challenge. I'm not going to spoil all the archetypes here, but there's a few of them in particular which are genuinely terrifying as they scurry around the place. They say the best form of flattery is copying someone else's work, and I'm sure the boys at Naughty Dog are flattered to see how their clickers look to have appeared in the Callisto Project, with even the way they move around looking similar. Graphically, it's a mixed bag. Now, I'm playing on 4K on Johnny Two Shoes acquired RTX 3080, and my rig still struggles. Turning off ray tracing and lowering settings between medium and high got me to a relatively stable 60 frames per second, but it does stutter like Rain Man on crack. In fact, Steam reviews as of today are calling this the Stutter Protocol, which I would say is fair, and I can imagine on a more modest rig it runs like a pig. I did find when entering a new area you'd get major stutters, but turning the camera 360 a few times helps load in textures so that you can get a smoother experience. Fingers crossed then that they can patch this out soon. Likewise, I did experience a crash to desktop a few times on playthroughs, but even with these issues and even with the lower than expected settings, it's an absolutely stunning looking game. The beauty is in the detail, with sweat beads dripping down faces or the frowns and eyes conveying deep emotions from characters, with facial animations bringing the excellent voice acting to life. Teeth, they've never looked so good and would be the envy of every British citizen. Volumetric steam emanates from valves throughout to give an unsettling walkthrough, and the aforementioned lighting gives a wonderful atmospheric look to proceedings that brought back vibes of Blade Runner. There was a moment, however, where I thought I was going to have an epileptic seizure, where lights flashed as if Taylor Swift herself had entered the bloody room, so I'm curious to see if anyone else struggles there. But generally speaking, I would argue the overall aesthetic is still too light, where a more darker game would help the horror. With all of that taken into account, with the high fidelity textures and detailed environments, what you have here in the Callisto Project is a visually stimulating game that will make the harshest critics hard in their pants. What particularly works well is the UI, or lack thereof, giving full real screen estate to showcase the beauty on offer. Sound for Reggie though is the standout feature. Playing on headphones is a particular delight, and most of the fear created derives from the haunting music that creates that sense of suspense and fear, only for there to be no monster. You'll hear the hums of machinery or the clanks of metal in the distance, implying something is crawling about, or the roar of something that sounds a bit hungry for your guts. Limbs fly off with a satisfying, meaty sound, with the sound of flesh tearing, punctuating the sound of your melee weapon hacking off a leg. Lovely stuff it is. The acting is also fantastic, with a strong script supported by great voiceovers. It never feels cheesy, it never feels overdone. Of course, Reggie's favourite feature is the accent of the British that have found themselves lost in space. Proper fucking lads they are. So the Callisto Project is an interesting one then, because in those first few hours it promises so much. It settles you into the world in an exciting way. It has mystery in its story, and the scares come at you thick and fast. However, much like a child growing into a teenager, you soon start to see through the magic of the world. Repetitive gameplay mechanics quickly creep in, predictable scares and cookie cutter environments show themselves all too often. Had the game progressed in a way that it offered more longevity in the form of new ideas, it could have been contender for Game of the Year. As it happens, the Callisto Project feels like it drags itself over its own 2 feet, and because of that, it's more likely going to be one to buy when the price drops. It's an enjoyable horror game that never quite reaches its potential. And with that, my lovelies, have a great day. Reggie out.